The United States of America and the Yemeni Houthis have agreed to a ceasefire. With the mediation of Oman, the parties have announced a truce. The Houthis will not fire at American ships and the military fleet, and the United States of America will no longer bomb Yemen. United States President Donald Trump recently announced that he is ending the war with the Houthis because they have allegedly promised not to attack United States ships. Nevertheless, the leadership of the Houthis stated that despite the truce with Washington, they will continue the so-called blockade of Israel in solidarity with the Palestinians, and to attack targets related to it, including Israeli commercial ships passing through the Red Sea. In the end, it can be said that Donald Trump's first war has ended, and it ended for him in failure and defeat. In this episode, I will explain why, and we will figure out what prompted Donald Trump to cease fire against the Yemeni Houthis. I'm Alexei Pichi, it's May 7th, let's go through this step by step. So, the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, announced on Tuesday that the United States has reached a truce with the Houthis in Yemen and will suspend its airstrikes, stating that the militants will no longer target ships in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Interestingly, Donald Trump made this announcement at the very moment when Israel was carrying out strikes on the capital of Yemen, the city of Sana'a, where they bombed the airport, and before that struck the port in Hodeidah. As the American president stated, quote, "I accept their word, and we are going to stop the bombing of the Houthis, which will take effect immediately. They simply don't want to fight, and we will respect that." Oman stated that it helped the United States reach a ceasefire with the Houthis. Marco Rubio, the United States Secretary of State and acting National Security Advisor to the United States President, said that the goal of prolonged strikes on Houthi targets was to force the group to stop attacks on regional shipping. As he stated, if this stops, then we can also stop. According to him, the United States carried out more than 1,000 strikes during its operation, which lasted more than 50 days. United States and Houthi officials suggested that the truce does not apply to Houthi attacks on Israel, which prompted Israel to take retaliatory measures. It's about the Red Sea and the attack on ships, United States State Department spokesperson Temi Brius told reporters on Tuesday. However, in a statement published on Tuesday, the Houthi Political Bureau did not mention a ceasefire with the United States, and it reiterated that its military actions against Israel will continue until the war in the Gaza Strip is ended. As stated in the Houthi statement, quote, "The Yemeni people remain committed to their way of pressuring the Israeli structure until the aggression in Gaza is stopped and the blockade is lifted." The specific terms of the truce are still not entirely clear. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Oman stated that neither side will target the other, including American ships in the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, ensuring freedom of navigation or uninterrupted flow. It remained unclear whether this condition would apply to ships heading to Israel. The Pentagon and the United States Central Command, responsible for military operations in the Middle East, stated that they could not say whether the bombing campaign had ended. Referring this question to the White House, the National Security Council spokesperson said that they did not have any additional information to provide. In Israel, officials were stunned by the statement made by United States President Donald Trump in the Oval Office on Tuesday evening, and they said that they were simply in complete shock. The president's statements are doubly surprising to Israel since they were made just a few hours after American military forces provided a security umbrella for the Israeli strike in Yemen, protecting against any potential failures during the operation. Israel's exclusion from prior notification and efforts, as well as the terms of the agreement, should be a wake-up call, especially given that the United States is involving Iran in its nuclear program. A little later, I'll explain why Saudi Arabia and Iran essentially helped the United States make this deal with the Houthis. But it's obvious that the interests of Israel and the United States don't always align. Well, and who can even guarantee that the agreement with Iran, which Trump called beneficial, will be perceived in Jerusalem in the same way? Israeli military aircraft struck the main Houthi-controlled airport yesterday, marking the second day of Israel's retaliatory strikes, after the group struck the Ben Gurion airport in Tel Aviv. In addition to the main airport in the country, the Israelis destroyed several infrastructure facilities, including 2 power plants in the Sana areas of Kaziat and Daban, as well as a power distribution station in Maine. Plus, a cement plant in Amran was also destroyed. A large part of the Yemeni capital is still experiencing power outages. Later that same day, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu published a militant post on his official account on the social network 10, which showed no intention of stopping strikes against the Houthis in Yemen. Moreover, right now Israel is actually expanding its military operation in the Gaza Strip, and there is no indication that Israel intends to stop. It's worth noting that the United States military campaign against the Houthis has not yielded any desired results. It's also interesting that Washington withdrew from this war on the eve of Donald Trump's visit to the Middle East and on the eve of the resumption of nuclear negotiations with Iran. It is very likely that these are absolutely connected stories. But before figuring out how Saudi Arabia and Iran essentially helped Trump make this deal with the Houthis, I want to say that Trump's first war ended in failure. Because in fact, the situation returned to March 2025, when the states had just begun their military operation against the Houthis. Essentially, nothing has changed and the status of the Houthis remains the same, as they say on the Arab street. It grew thanks to victory in such a symbolic struggle, despite the serious destruction of infrastructure in Hudaydah. So in fact, the Houthis can now say that yes, we reached an agreement with the Americans, but our original goal was strikes against Israel, strikes against Israeli interests. It hasn't gone anywhere. The fact that the Americans bombed us for 50 days hasn't changed anything in this regard. So here the question arises about the very feasibility of this whole military operation if Trump, simply upon hearing the Houthis' promise not to strike American ships, pulls out of this deal. The messages in the messenger signaling between American leadership refer to a past scandal. Do you recall it? That's where J.D. Vance was saying, yes, why should we even be involved with this Middle East at all? The key point is that they don't bother us. Everything else is of no interest. If European ships are attacked, let Europe handle it. If Israeli ships are attacked, let Israel deal with it themselves. Well, and here, returning to Saudi Arabia and Iran, Saudi Arabia didn't like the war with the Houthis from the very beginning. Because of the potential risks to their own security, Riyadh is quite comfortable with the ceasefire they achieved in Yemen after the unsuccessful military campaign against the Houthis in the years 2015 to 2021. They are not inclined to reignite the conflict, at least for now, because they want to focus on economic development and attracting investment. It is quite possible that the Saudis were persuading the United States of America to end the war with the Houthis before Trump's visit to Riyadh. In Iran, they initially offered to help the United States negotiate with the Houthis as a bargaining chip in their own nuclear talks. Well, considering the ties between the Houthis and Tehran, the Iranians could afford to play this card, persuading the states to seek peace instead of fighting to the end without any clear objective. Since Trump is inclined toward negotiations with Iran rather than confrontation, at some point it seems he agreed. And some media claim that Iranian diplomats helped the United States negotiate with the Houthis through the formal mediation of Oman. So you imagine a situation where Trump, with the help of Tehran, is negotiating with the Houthi terrorists. All this coincided with the news that on May 11th, negotiations between the United States and Iran on the nuclear program will resume. They were suspended after the United States announced the introduction of secondary sanctions against all countries buying oil and petroleum products from Iran. In Tehran, this was perceived as a deliberate escalation. Well, now, apparently they will return to negotiations, although still not directly, but through intermediaries in Oman. A ceasefire with the Houthis will be a good backdrop for the negotiation process. Israel, which recently carried out strikes on Yemen, is outside the brackets. And judging by media reports, the Americans did not inform the Israelis about their intention to end the war with the Houthis. But I should note right away that for now, it's too early to draw conclusions about the strength of Israeli-American friendship. The United States could have ended the war with the Houthis while remaining committed to Israel's security in their war in Gaza or other issues. Nevertheless, this situation definitely leaves a certain aftertaste. And it characterizes Donald Trump as someone who got involved in this confrontation and then withdrew from it without really achieving his goals. To claim that the main goal has been achieved, that the Houthis have promised not to attack American ships, well, that's kind of insignificant. So I'll just leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Bye, everyone.